Yesterday, as part of an ongoing investigation, detectives with the Crimes Against Children Unit approached the Mecklenburg County Magistrate with facts concerning allegations against Mr. Henry Black Jr. Those facts were presented to the magistrate, and the magistrate agreed and subsequently issued warrants for Mr. Black's arrest. Mr. Black has been charged or will be charged once he's returned to North Carolina with 4 counts of incest, 14 counts of indecent liberties with children, 2 counts of statutory rape, 3 counts of statutory sex offense, 2 counts of child abuse sexual act. Currently, as a member of our community, Mr. Black is a member of the Citizen Review Board. I believe that he has been a member since, or a part of the board in some capacity since 2014. He is also the co-founder of the Genesis Project One. From their own website, Genesis services have been developed to address the developmental, social, and community needs of school-aged children and their families in at-risk communities. He is a co-founder of that. This investigation, well, let me back up. Well, Mr. Black is currently in the custody of the Horry County Sheriff's Department, which is in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. He is awaiting extradition back to the state of North Carolina, where ultimately he will be remanded into the custody of the Mecklenburg County Sheriff's Department. This investigation began in September 3rd of this month, and it spans 22 years, from 1996 to 2018. This investigation, I said earlier, was ongoing, and it is ongoing because there are 2 courses that this investigation is currently taking. The first one is that over this 20-year period, and I'm just pausing for a second because this part is kind of hard to understand, is that there were times where these survivors, and I call them survivors, not victims, that they actually had the courage to approach adults, people who were in positions to report, and they actually approached adults and told them that this abuse was taking place, and those people did nothing. We are currently looking into those subjects right now and trying to track them down to interview them. But if you know something, you have to say something. This, over 22 years, did not get into the hands of law enforcement until September 3rd. Also, over those 22 years, there are quite a few of other names that have been mentioned in this report or in this investigation that our detectives will be tracking down and speaking to them. And that is part of what I would like to say, is that there are any other survivors, not victims, survivors out there, that they can come forward and mimic the survivors that have reported this currently, take on your courage and call law enforcement. And so that we can look into this. If there are any other survivors out there, I encourage you to please step up and give us a call. You can call Crime Stoppers, and also I would like to give out the number of one of our detectives, Detective Odell, and I'm going to ask that this number not be used by anyone but survivors. This is her desk number, and she's not going to give out any information, but call Detective Odell if you're a survivor, or you can call Crime Stoppers. Her desk number is 336-4466. You can call that directly. So you have multiple ways of doing that. I would also like to say that when I mentioned the charge of incest, that I know some people have started to surmise of who this could be or who the survivors could be. We would like to ask everyone to give them all due respect and not to hunt them down, not to look them up, because they are surviving every day. It's a struggle for them every day. And our detectives have seen that in their encounters with them. But also, we're talking about incest in a statutory manner, not what most people would think of. It is a relationship-based statute, but if you're trying to imagine who this could be, the statute says that this is a relationship between grandparent, grandchild, parent, child, stepchild, legally adopted child, brother, sister, half or whole, aunt, uncle, nephew, or niece. That's pretty broad. So please don't expect that you could think of who this is and try to track them down. And if you do, just give them the respect of not doing that. So at this time, I think I'll take a couple of questions.
Gerald, can you, as charged, and I know the investigation is still going on, can you give us a number of victims and age range? When did this, how young were they? When did this start?
I'm not going to give the number out. There were more than one victim. And they started over 22 years ago. Okay, so you're talking 22-year period. So you're talking, when it started, these survivors were very young, and now they are adults at this point in time.
And you also talked about adults who were told.
Mhm.
Were they in any kind of custodial type relationship, teacher,
I will say they,
school? I mean, can you give us some idea who they were?
I will say that anyone who was told should have called the police, but there are those who had a duty to report by their position, and I'll say that because our detectives are really looking into that really hard and heavy right now. But yes, there were those who had a duty to report and did not report.
Legally required duty to report?
That's exactly what I'm saying.
How interconnected is the charges that this Henry Black will be facing and Genesis Project One? Is that an ongoing part of your investigation?
Potentially. Potentially.
So he would have had, obviously, access to other potential victims.
The investigation has not made any connections yet, but it is a potential. There is a potential there. We are looking into anyone that could possibly have any inappropriate contact with Mr. Black to come forward. So that includes anyone, Project Genesis or any other associations you may have had, anyone. We're just not going to limit it to that relationship he has with that organization, but anyone or any organizations that there could be out there.
In terms of these adults who had a duty to report, do you know whether or not they were just told this information and just kind of dismissed it out of hand, or did they go back and follow up with Mr. Black and gotten thrown off the case that way?
Do not know. I will tell you that the survivors, their description of what was taking place was clear. It was clear that they were being abused. There was nothing that they could have misunderstood. It could not have been a miscommunication. They were clear about what was happening to them for 22 years.
Can you tell us what prompted the survivor or survivors to come forward now?
Persistence. Their persistence. I said they are courageous survivors, and they have been persistent for 22 years. And they finally got this into the hands of law enforcement.
I don't want to ask you to speculate on this too much, but Mr. Black, as you mentioned, is a chair of the Citizen Review Board. He's been on the Community Relations Board. I think it'd be safe to say a somewhat prominent figure of the community, and now he's facing these charges. Does that at all play into how difficult it is for people to come forward, for agencies to investigate? Is there any message about how that shouldn't be an excuse for investigating and holding someone responsible for something?
That is not an excuse whatsoever. We're not concerned with what his position is or his accomplishments. We're concerned with the victims and the survivors and what he did. And I think that anyone else out there would be the same. It doesn't matter who you are. No one's above the law.
Does this seem to be a predatory type situation where he got into this line of work because of, to do these things?
I really don't know his psychological makeup or his motivations for doing what he's done.
Let me ask you, obviously you guys do your job, go where the facts lead you. I have no earthly idea what this guy's defense is going to be, at this point. But there are times when the Citizens Review Board and the police are at loggerheads or in an adversarial position. So it is possible they can say, hey, you guys are just doing this because there are times when I've come after you. How would you respond to that?
I don't think that's the case at all. There's no way that could be. I would say that if it were appropriate, we could refer you to the survivors. We did not seek them out. Their persistence sought out justice, and that's how we came to be involved. That's what took place. This has nothing to do with the dynamics, because we work with them more than there is an adversarial relationship. We work with them more than anything else. So it has nothing to do with that. It has everything to do with the persistence of the survivors coming forth. 22 years, Glenn, 22 years they have been pushing and telling people this. And finally, it got into the hands of law enforcement.
How difficult is that, to keep speaking up, to keep telling people, and people either don't listen, don't care, don't believe you, or sweep it under the rug? How difficult must it be for them now, 22 years later, to continue on that path?
I consider it superhuman what they've done. Everything that they've done, I'm not going to get into the details of the case, but our detectives have a great deal of experience, especially our crime against children detectives. They see a lot, and in this case, it gave them pause. It did. The details gave them pause, and knowing that for 22 years, these survivors have pushed and pushed and pushed, and now it's here, that's superhuman from what they're overcoming, and they have to overcome every day.
What's next for Black? He's all the way down in Myrtle Beach area. You guys planning on bringing him here, obviously?
Yes, he's awaiting extradition, like I said earlier, back to North Carolina, where he will ultimately be put into the hands of the Mecklenburg County Sheriff's Department, and all the warrants will be completely served upon him.
And I just had one follow-up on the people who are legally required to report. And I know statutes can get tricky when it comes to this, but is it potentially criminal to not report?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. That's why that's part of the ongoing investigation. And we're talking a 22-year span.
All right, what kind of a message do you, given their failure to report, is there anything that you could say to the public at large? I mean, I think a lot of people out there are probably shocked that they didn't come forward, that this sort of thing still happens.
It's inexcusable. It's completely inexcusable. It is not very difficult to pick up the phone and call to just start. And it just baffles the mind why someone did not take that step to make that phone call to law enforcement. I mean, 22 years, and over that time, they kept telling people and kept telling people. But no one actually picked up the phone and dialed those 3 numbers, 911. Did not do it. Completely irresponsible. It's shocking.
What was he picked up for in Horry County?
The warrants that I mentioned earlier.
All right, please testify.
Okay.
Thank you, Chief.
All right.
Appreciate that.
Thank you.
All right, as Chief Smith said, we urge anyone who either has information or who may have been victimized by Mr. Black to please call either the detective in charge, Detective Odell, or you can call Crime Stoppers at 704-334-1600. Thank you very much for coming. Appreciate it. Have a good day.